Welcome to another episode of the Impossible Life Podcast. I'm your co-host, Nick Surface, and I'm sat across from a man who was once classified as a road hazard in the Philippines. That's right, friends, the former Navy SEAL, Garrett Unkelbach, a walking insurance claim for motorists.
I identify as a concrete pylon.
You really do. Now, this is like I think I gave an intro with a lesson a few weeks ago. I felt like we needed an intro with some real roots. And I realized, I think it was on the 100th episode, we started to talk about the time that you got hit by a moving vehicle, and we never told the story. And this is actually one that if you're trying to build the myth of like Navy SEALs and specifically of you, this is one that I think people will enjoy. So please share it with everybody.
This is a very mythical story that's actually a very true story.
As opposed to partially true?
Yes.
Very true.
Very true.
Okay.
I was in the Philippines doing some work, and I was with a Marine Raider. We were going somewhere. We were in a hurry, and I'm following behind him. We're crossing this big street in the Philippines, and streets there are a little bit different than streets in the States. Basically, it was like each side of the road was like just a 20-yard wide, dirt path.
Okay.
And there's no lanes. People are just like doing whatever. And there wasn't like good crosswalks or anything like that either. And so we're trying to cross the street, and the divider in the middle, it's basically like in the States, we have like at least a concrete barrier,
right?
Like at a minimum. It was literally like a metal guardrail for like a concert guardrail.
Oh, really? Oh,
wow, that was the divider. So we ran to like a gap in one, and I'm just standing there at the gap. I crossed the first part of the street where cars are coming from my left. And so I'm looking right, and it's like a chaos of cars. I'm just waiting for a gap. And then this big gap is coming. And so as soon as the gap comes, I bolt across the street. The guy that I was with was already a good portion ahead of me, and was just looking back at me as I was crossing the street, like waiting for me to catch up, because he had a head start on me getting to the road, and he had gotten ahead of me. And so I as soon as this gap comes from the right, I'm just looking right, and I can hear stuff coming from the left, obviously, but it's all behind me. And gap comes from the right, and I just dart out into the road. And as I dart out into the road, some motorcyclist, behind me, it was on the left side, it was like, oh, there's a big gap, and he was gonna, jump ahead on the left side of the road.
So he crossed into oncoming traffic.
He saw the big gap coming, and I didn't hear him or see him until literally the last second. So basically, I bolted out into the road, and he's trying to do the same thing I'm doing, using the left side of the road. And so at the last second, I look over my left shoulder, and I see this guy coming right at me on a motorcycle. And I just put my forearm up to protect myself and get into a power stance. And me and this guy connect body to body, right? And he was going at least 40 miles an hour,
right?
On a motorcycle, on a scooter, it was on a motorcycle, connect body to body. And literally, I don't know if you've ever played Grand Theft Auto, that's what it looked like. I just clotheslined this guy off of his motorcycle, and his motorcycle just, goes another 30 yards and crashes and flips. It's bad. I think it's plastic all over the place. And I'm looking down at this guy, and he's screaming, right? Like his helmet is cracked. He's reaching up with his right arm, holding his left collarbone. I think I broke his collarbone on my body, because my forearm hit his helmet, and his helmet was cracked. I think he broke his collarbone against me when we hit. He literally just bounced off of me, which is crazy because he's going 40 miles an hour. I was standing there, but I weighed more than twice what this person weighed.
Right.
I was at about 240 at that point. That was the biggest I ever was, the strongest I ever was.
240.
Was when this happened, I was deadlifting 600 pounds.
Right.
I was the strongest I'd ever been in my life, and this guy had to weigh 115, 120.
Yeah.
So anyways, we connect body to body. He's screaming, break his collarbone, his helmet's broken. And there's a Filipino police officer standing on the other side of the road, literally 15 yards away, saw the whole thing. And I kind of just put up the, I don't know hands and look at him. And I looked down at the guy, and I just helped him get to the side of the road. The police officer didn't even help. He just stood there. I helped the guy get out of the road. And then I was like, well, I got to go. I don't have pedestrian insurance to give you for this accident. I don't know what to say to you. I got to be somewhere right now. It's what do you say to the car when it hits a pedestrian?
It gets jacked up. Yeah. Well, the thing I love about this, so you've told me that the Marine Raider loved that story.
Oh my, this guy had seen a ton of action, and he was like, He couldn't quit talking. Like as soon as we got back, could not. He's like, I saw the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like I cannot even believe that this actually happened.
What I love is that somewhere out there's some guy in the Philippines going like, man, I crossed the street and I hit this guy. Like he tracked, like I can't imagine the story that he's telling about the time he hit the white dude.
This white guy hit me with a baseball bat.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah,
tried to kill me.
Yeah, that's what happened for sure. Yeah, because you can't say I hit him with my motorcycle and I'm the one that came off worse. Anyways,
that was a physics equation. It was small, fast-moving mass versus large mass.
Yeah, but dude, still, I gotta think. Anyways, we could go wait. We've already gone a few minutes into that. I hope you enjoyed that, friends, because these are the kind of stories that Garrett tells sometimes. That you're like, dude, no one else has stories like that.
Well, sometimes my wife tells accidentally not true stories, like me punching the shark in the face,
which I enjoy those. This is a great storyteller.
That's an actual true story,
right? Yeah. No, not the shark in the face. The motorcycle is a true story. Okay. Anyways. So we wanted to close the story loop on that because we had teased about that story, and I said to Garrett, because I think I can't remember what episode it was, but you're like, oh, we should tell that story. I'll finish that story later, and you just never did. So anyways, now you know, friends. I hope you enjoyed that. Today's episode is on words. And okay, great. You're listening to this whole podcast. You're very familiar with words. Well, if you know anything about our podcast, then you know where we go whenever we go to words, and it's Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary. So what better place to start off about the significance of words than right there?
We start there all the time with Noah Webster. It's not like we just have this particular fascination with Noah Webster. Noah Webster had a very intentional relationship with words. When at the time that he wrote this dictionary in 1828, at the time that this is happening and he's writing it, America's very new. Yeah. America's less than 50 years old when he's working on this, and Britain had their own dictionary, which he didn't think was right. Like they had, in his opinion, they had fallen away from words. What the definition of a lot of words was, because in his mind, which I agree with, the definition of words and meaning descend from who we are as people, which descend from what we believe, what we value, which comes from the Bible. And some of their meaning for words in Britain, he believed had fallen away from their biblical meaning, right? And not that English comes from the Bible, but meaning comes from the Bible, right? And truth comes from the Bible, and words are based upon that. So anyways, I say that to say, at that time in America, people used British dictionaries, and he said we need our own dictionary, right, to establish freedom and to establish words based upon what the Bible says is true. At the very beginning of his dictionary, in his preface, he starts with, like, the first part of the 1828 Webster's Dictionary is Psalms 11:3. If the foundations are destroyed, what hope do the righteous have? What can the righteous do if the foundations are destroyed? Right? And he's talking about the foundation of words. We can see today in America where words have changed meanings, right? He talks about in the preface how, just like entropy in physics, where things have the tendency to by friction, by heat, by whatever, to lose meaning, to lose power. He says that humans and humans' relationship with words have a tendency to fall away from their original meaning, to fall away from power. We see this today in the way words are used. We see so many words get repossessed incorrectly, given wrong definitions. We also see, what's crazy is he talks about this in the 1828 dictionary about slang and stuff like that. And today we have slang has academic references, right? Like, people have taken these words that have just a contextual meaning and made them words of value, right? And really the power of words is in their true definition. And we're going to talk today a little bit further about the power of words, but we just wanted to start there with really the what words are. Is they're the foundation of our society. If we can't communicate with each other, right? Like, it's literally, as people say, we're not on the same sheet of music. Yeah. A lot of America is not on the same sheet of music. They're not on the same sheet of music in beliefs. They're not on the same sheet of music in definitions of words. And you have all these miscommunications in the world today because people are saying the same words, but they have different meanings for those words.
Yeah, and I want to say to people up front, if you're kind of like, okay, whatever, guys, I get it. Words are important. Like,
this is not a dictionary lesson today.
No, it's definitely not. As always, we're going to give you a little bit of shift in mindset, but I think this is also sort of a blind spot revealer, and we're going to give you a different perspective on words, and we're going to get to that. We're going to get to three things that words do, but just to talk about what Garrett just said in relation to what Noah Webster had said. I mean, he was talking about that if we start accepting colloquial slang terms as definitions, that we're on the way to departing to a place that we won't be able to get back from, because we'll have completely lost the meaning of words. So, we all know this is important, but let's think about some of the ways that this happens in modern day. So here's a few example words. If someone comes to you and says, hey, I got fired, that hurts, right?
Yeah.
Hey, we're restructuring, right? Like, this happens all the time where people will take something, they'll find a way to phrase it better, and it becomes very acceptable. Fired and restructured. Okay, it stings a little bit less. You can see, that's okay. Okay, well, let's talk about some that are maybe a little bit inflammatory. Hey, ARs. Everybody knows AR stands for assault rifle, right, Garrett? Oh no, that was something that a politician made up so that they could have it, because assault rifle sounds like you're going in to commit heinous crimes. What does AR actually stand for, G?
Armalite.
Thank you. I hope you knew that, but like that's how you can make it inflammatory. Then there's things where they try and soften the blow of what's actually come on or take the ownership off of it. Drug addict. No. Chemical dependency, right? Like these, you understand, these are referring to the same thing, but create a completely different connotation and a completely different feel. And those are 3 examples. There were some more inflammatory ones that I realized that Garrett quite rightly pointed out that my 10-year-old, my 8-year-old might listen to this sometime. So we won't use those examples. But I can tell you, if you're ever looking for a way to be deceptive and for people to get you to accept something as maybe, that's not so bad, change the name of it, right? Like in marketing, you know that all the time, how powerful the name of something is as far as the effect it has, the image that it conjures up in somebody's mind. And when that happens both for good and for bad. And we're going to get more into that.
Even in Noah Webster's time at Civic, just talking about words for a second, how things have changed and what that actually does to a society over time. Everyone describe if you ask, what type of government do we have? They would tell you that we have a democratic republic.
Yeah.
Right. And the Constitution talks about democracy, right? And the right to democracy, right? The democracy is just that the people can communicate, they can talk, and they can govern, right? That's the foundation of what democracy is. When this country was founded and in the time of Noah Webster's dictionary, no one called our government a democratic republic. There wasn't this label written in the Constitution either, is that's what we are, is a democratic republic. Everyone called it a representative republic, that representatives are elected. But today, everyone calls it a democratic republic.
Right.
Just a small example. And so what that means is then people think that we are a democracy, right? Democracy and what democracy is a part of what our government is, but that's not the actual contextual form of our government. It's a representative republic, right? So I say that to say words begin to change over time, and people will allow a word that they're like, well, it's basically the same thing, but it's not. Different words have different meanings. And if you don't understand what words really mean, if you don't understand how words truly have power, your life will begin to slip, just like entropy, like Noah Webster talked about. Your life will begin to slip in a direction, and you don't understand why. You're literally, as he said, as Psalms 11:3 says, eroding the foundation of your life.
Yeah.
And then what can the righteous do? Even if you live right, but you've let your foundation in your life erode, you're going to be completely unstable. So let's get into why words are so powerful and how words have so much meaning.
Yeah. So we've talked about Noah Webster, and we've gone back to the 1800s. We're going to go all the way back to the beginning of time. Something I've heard you say many times, G, that I'd never really thought about before is you asked the question, like, why do you think in all of creation only human beings have the power to speak?
Yeah.
So interesting.
I mentioned this quite a lot in the men's group that Nick and I get the opportunity to serve in on Saturday mornings. I say, one thing that I've heard from one of my mentors is that men have to be told once but reminded many times. So I say a lot of the same things over and over again.
Yeah.
And, when I first started speaking, I was like, man, people are going to think I'm an idiot if I say the same things 2 days in a row. And then I've realized, like, no, that's actually one of the most powerful things you can do is continue to say the same things over and over, because then people will get it, right? People have to be told once but reminded many times. This is a lesson, and we're going to talk about it right now. This is one of the reminders that I give every Saturday, right, about who God is and the way that God works. When God made the earth, right? Genesis 1:1, by the way, is in the beginning God, right? That's like the very fabric of who God is. Before there was anything, there was God. In the beginning, God. But then what did God do in the beginning of Genesis is that he spoke the earth into motion, right? On a day he made the waters, on a day he made the lands, on a day he made the animals, on a day he made the fish of the sea, and he spoke them all into motion.
Yeah.
Right? Just spoke and animals existed. Just spoke and the waters were created. Just spoke in day and night. But then it says when man is created, that they created man in their own. Let us make man is what it says. Genesis 1:26, 1:27. Let us make man in our own image, right? And then Genesis 2:6, 2:7, and then we breathed into man the breath of life. So you have to understand, all of creation, literally everything in the universe, except man, except human, everything in the universe, God spoke into motion. But then when he made humans, when he made man, when he made Adam, says that they made him, they being Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, made Adam with his hands and then breathed into him the breath of life, right? And that's pneuma, that's spirit. What is the breath of life? Is it just oxygen? No, because God just spoke the animals into motion. He didn't have to breathe the breath of life into them. When God made man, he put inside of man, right? When he's breathing it, like God's breath is powerful. Like I won't go deep into the theology of it or the exegesis of it, but the wind, the breath, the spirit of God, it's a powerful force, right? And so when God breathed the breath of life into man, God deposited a piece of his spirit inside of us, right? And that's what differentiates us from every other creature on the planet, right? That man has spirit, right? Animals have body. Animals have soul. They have a mind. They have a form of a will and emotions, but they don't have a spirit. And what is a spirit? Right? It's the divine part of us. It's the part of us that'll go beyond this earth. It's the part of us that is a piece of God that he put in us, where he made us like him. Right? Because there's creatures that you would think are similar to humans, but nothing is actually like God. So the part of us that is like God is that there's a spirit within us. And so what does that give us the ability to do? To speak. God spoke everything into motion. When God speaks, things happen immediately. God gave us the ability to speak. Nothing else on the earth can speak, right? You have animals that make sounds, and even parrots can mimic the words that we have, right? But they don't have a tongue. They don't have the ability to give meaning to meaning. Words have no power to them, right? A parrot will say whatever, and it doesn't mean anything to them. You can get them to say silly things. You can get a parrot to say, I love you. It doesn't mean anything to a parrot. Only humans, only man can speak, and words have power. And the Bible talks about the power that our words have, but the first thing I wanted to get to today was talking about how God made us so different than any other creature on this earth. And so we have the ability to speak just like God does. What happens when God speaks? Things happen, right? Things come into motion. God made us in his image. We have the divine powers that God has. And you can say, whoa, man, like that's big talk. And this is very serious, right? When God made us this way, like God made us in his image, the same powers that God has, he gave us a very, very small measure of that. When I speak, like the earth, like I can't just speak stars into motion. I can't just speak a planet into existence, but my words do have power, right? When I speak things over time, things begin to change. But the power of life and death is in the tongue. We're going to come back to that scripture later. That's what the Bible says. So I say that to say that's where we are very different than any other creature on the earth. We have the ability to use our words to do powerful things. And we're going to get to the three things that words really do. But God made us so unique, and it would be a disaster for you to go through life and not realize one of the greatest superpowers that you have, one of the ways that God made you in his image, is your ability to speak. What I say to men all the time is that the enemy wants you to not speak. The enemy wants you to use your words for harm. The enemy wants you to speak ill of other people, speak ill of yourself. And we're going to teach you these are the things that you need to do with your words.
I mean, I hope you capture when you understand that your power to speak is really an endowment of God, and that there's a real understanding of the authority that you have in that. That's why it's so damaging to just be like, oh, hey, we just evolved. We're one up from the apes. Because that removes all the responsibility and authority that you've been given by God, including the unique ability to use your words on top of so many other things that he gave us when he created us. And so I
also think about the way animals are that's very different than us.
Right.
Is that animals don't have an understanding of really what good and evil is, or even what righteousness is. Like, to kill someone is an awful thing. Right? If a grizzly bear like eats somebody in Yosemite, right, in a national park, is that grizzly bear evil?
Right.
They're going to put that bear down because we don't want that to happen again, and that bear is now comfortable eating humans.
Right.
And that's not a good thing. But no one's like, man, that bear is evil. Right. And though, like, if you talk about a human who ate another person, that's evil.
Yeah.
Right.
Truthfully.
That's true evil. but you don't feel that way about a bear.
Yeah.
Right? That's just a bear being a bear, in the bear's nature. And that is just one of many examples of how man has a very different nature than any other creature on the planet.
Yeah, we kind of went into the rabbit hole a little bit, looking at like Coco, the gorilla that could communicate like with sign language, and we looked at like, you know, whales can communicate with sounds, but there's a difference between, like we said, communication and actually the ability to speak and being made in the image of God.
Right, and animals have sound, can make a lot of
Correct.
sounds.
Yeah.
But we have a tongue which can form words.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and even humans can communicate with sounds. For a long time, people have communicated with sound. Think like a battle horn or a trumpet, right? And you define, you give a meaning to what that, okay, when I give this sound, this is going to happen. When I give this sound, this is what we're going to do. But words have a definition, right? That has a meaning, and that's part of what Noah Webster knew was so important. We have to define what these actual definitions are of words, so that they will maintain their power. If you don't understand the power of words, if you don't use words correctly, you'll mislive your life.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I also think about every great action movie, as well as I'm sure you spent an evolution in the SEAL teams, learning how to make animal sounds so you can communicate on the battlefield. Because everybody knows, you know, you get like Arnold Schwarzenegger's like, cuckoo, and then you know it's time to go.
Classified.
Oh, okay. I won't go there. Anyways, we better move on. Okay. So let's talk about 3 things. These are the 3. We're going to get into 3 things that words do.
We want this to be
with some practical.
We want this to be practical, because I could spend a lot of time talking about the Spirit and who God is and why He gave us this power. But I know that the people who listen to this podcast, you're with us, right? I understand that words have power. Let's get practical on how we can use our words.
And much like we referred to with God in the beginning, the first thing that words do is they create. Right. And because it was more than just communicate. Like we said, they truly create. You can create a feeling in somebody. You can create a picture. You can create all sorts of things, damaging and good. And actually, a quote from C.S. Lewis, who I love C.S. Lewis.
He's so good.
He's so good. And this is a, as you said, this is sort of a low-level takeaway, but it's a really good one. He said, don't use words too big for the subject. Don't say infinitely when you mean very. Otherwise, you'll have no word left when you want to talk about something really infinite.
So
good.
That one hits a chord with me.
Yeah.
Because from the time I was, like, a lot of people, like you even tell me, like, I'm Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec, right?
Because you are. Or Tammy 1, according to your wife.
Oh, man.
If you're a Parks and Rec fan, you know why that's funny.
That's not always a good thing. But anyways, like, the way that what Ron won't do is exaggerate, right? And when I was growing up, I realized that people would exaggerate, right? And they'd say more than what they actually mean. And what I found is, like, man, those people don't have credibility.
Right.
Just like the story of the boy who cried wolf.
We all know that one.
Right. He begins to tell, he's trying to get people to care about him.
Right.
Right. I know, I see men do this all the time. Like, hey, I got this issue. And they'll tell you it's worse than it is because they just want you to feel bad for their situation.
Yeah.
Right. And so what happens is you think you're making your situation better, but you're making it worse. What is so important is that you would understand how powerful your words actually are. We are the ones who take the power away from our words when we use them incorrectly.
Yes.
Right. It's the same thing as, like, you know, trying to eat your steak with a hammer. Right. When you use something incorrectly, you actually rob it of its power.
Yeah.
So I'm not someone who wants to exaggerate, because when I speak, I want people to hear my words and know exactly what they mean, and they know that they're true. Right. But how often do we know people who are exaggerators, who are quote unquote storytellers, right? And when they say things, we have to take it with a grain of salt because we know they're like, well, they've enhanced that story.
Yeah.
Right. They've exaggerated a little bit. What you're doing with, like, and this, you know, you can say, oh, that's just the way that Garrett is. To me, I think exaggeration is just a form of lying.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're trying to paint a picture that's not actually true. What your words are supposed to do is let me tell you exactly what happened. Right? I've made multiple police statements in my life. And one of the things that I have as a Navy SEAL, also the way that I speak to people, like, I've stood before a judge for multiple people and given an account. My words have power. Right? Because I have credibility. People know, like, I've had to write statements for stuff I did in the military. I've spoken for people and kept them from going to jail over, you know, someone exaggerated. Literally, this is a story from the military. Someone exaggerated about one of the guys in my platoon, and I happened to be there. And I happened to be the only person who was sober. Whose testimony did they take?
Yeah.
Mine, right? And the judge looked me in the eye and said, those man's words are true, right? That's credibility right there. And so one of the most important things that you can have is your credibility. That when you say things, what you're talking about is actually telling truth, telling the right story. Because that's what words are supposed to do. Words are supposed to create. And so when I'm communicating to people with my words, I'm telling you what I think you need to do. I'm telling you a story of what happened. I'm trying to explain a situation. And if you'll use words correctly, you'll communicate more powerfully, right? But because of people's lack of vocabulary, because of people's emotional selfishness is really a way that I would put it. People will exaggerate to try to get to a feeling instead of to try to get to the truth.
You know where you see that more than anything, and it's unfortunate because it got worse during COVID, is in the media.
Yeah.
If you start to get good at understanding how people manipulate words, you'll be able to pick up on the words that you're like, wait a minute, that's a purposely vague word because they don't have a credible source, or they've put it in a certain quotation. And people read headlines, right? So you start off the story, they're going to give you 3 bullet points before they actually get to the full story because they know people won't read them. So they put all the inflammatory stuff that's meant to get your attention. And so people end up repeating that communication.
That's what buzzwords are. That's why people use them. Oh, if I use this word, people, they don't have to read the whole article. People don't like to read. That's the saddest thing in society. People don't like to read. But if I use one of these buzzwords, that'll communicate enough feeling to them about what this actually is. Words are meant to tell a story. Words are meant to create. Words are meant, if you can use words correctly, just like C.S. Lewis said, you can tell a story of what actually happened. I can explain to you, here's what this place looked like.
Right.
Here's what this item does. Here's what you're supposed to do. Here's what you're capable of. But instead, if you use words wrongly, you destroy your credibility. And instead of painting a great picture, you tell a lie.
Yeah. And ask yourself, do you want to be the tabloid headline? Like, no, nobody wants to be the tabloid. I love looking at those National Enquirers when you're in stores at the groceries. That's where I learned that Barack Obama was abducted by aliens. I thought that was really useful information at the time. But we laugh about it. But some people don't realize because they fly off and they over exaggerate all the time, they are the tabloid headline in life.
People they use more and more exaggeration because you're trying to get people to listen to you, and you're running in the wrong direction. If you want people to hear what you say, let your words be exactly what's true.
Which is point 2. And we talk about words, their contract, their promise. And we go straight to the Bible for this. I mean, you want to talk about having power in your words and having the power to create. We talked about we're made in man's image. So we have a shadow of what God has. God could speak something and it comes to pass. We can speak something and bring it to pass. The difference is it's not just the power of our word. We have to back that up with a lot of action, right? To eventually get it to the point where we do create. And so we see in Isaiah 55, 10, and 11. It's so great because that... anyways, I'll just read 55:11 and not get distracted. But this is God talking through Isaiah. And he says, I'll start at verse 10. As the rain and the snow come down from heaven and do not return to it without watering the earth and making it bud and flourish, so that it yields seed for the sower and bread for the eater, so is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it. I love that.
It's also Matthew 5:37. Jesus says, let your yes be your yes and your no be your no. What, like God speaks and then things happen, right? God speaks and then takes action, right? What our words are is our words are contracts, right? We talk about this all the time. Like if you want to build confidence, keep your word to yourself, right? Do what you say. It's like literally with words, you get to think about when you say things to people that you're writing out a contract and you're signing it. If you treated your words that way and then looking back at number 1, right? Like you're creating and this is your credibility, right? Time. If you would treat your words like a contract, which they are, then your words have more power, right? Think about someone who has so much respect. Think about even someone like the president, whether, you like our president right now or you don't. I would imagine most of the people who listen to this podcast probably don't like our president, but just think about a president that you liked and respected, right? From whatever time in history. These are men who are very powerful. And if that president says, this is what I'm going to do, let's just talk about, I don't know who doesn't like George Washington. Right? If George Washington said, here's what we're going to do, you knew it would happen.
Yeah.
Right? And so much like just by his words, everything's changed. People would applaud for his words. People felt relief just by what he said. Like the president said it. It's as good as gold. Right? What if people felt that way about your words? Well, where that comes from is that your words have power. And why would your words have power? Because when you say something, you do it. And the opposite is true. You can be someone who's like, oh, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do that. And no one ever sees you do it.
Yeah.
And so you become the boy who cries wolf, that maybe you finally are telling the truth and no one's going to believe you.
Man, people can't really. If you have not started being the type of person that takes your word seriously, you do not understand how valuable what Garrett just says is. I'll go back to whenever he was coaching me. My man said,
I love
Sorry,
that. That's my sound.
I just wanted to use it, man. But I remember you.
I don't need to load the gun. It's already
Bro,
loaded.
I know. That's why I like that sound effect, because I know it triggers you every time, because you're like, there's already one in the chamber. Anyways.
Dead man's gun.
Okay. I can go on? Okay, thank you. I just remember when you, like, I think it was our very first session before I'd actually started paying you to coach me. We were just meeting to see if we'd be a good fit. And you looked me, I still remember we were sat in Ascension Coffee in the Star in Frisco. And you looked me dead in the eye and you're like, and I've never believed anybody more than when they said this. You're like, I would rather die than break my word. And I was like, who is this guy? Like, in my head, because I believed you. Like, there was no humor. There was no, like, you looked at me like you were ready to just like fight right there. Like, you had your resting intensity face, which I now have come to appreciate. And you talk to me. You're like, you're like, sometimes Lindsay will be like, no, it's not that big a deal. And you're like, no, I have to do this. Well, fast forward a few years.
Why? She'd say, why are you doing that?
Right.
Because I said.
Yeah.
Like, I have to. I said I would. I have to do this.
Yeah.
I don't want to. It's not convenient. I'd much rather do something else. I wish I hadn't said it, but I said it, so I have to do it.
Yeah, it's hard, man. But you know, the flip side of that is your wife never has to wonder if you're going to do what you say. Mm-hmm. And so I'll put this into my own life. I remember one time I had done something that upset Rian, and we were literally sitting there talking about it before bed, and it meant so much to me. She said something to me, and I said, babe, I was like, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. And I'm talking about, like, it wasn't, then I had to like prove it for the next 6 days. She, snap of a finger, she was like, okay, and it was over. And I had such a takeaway from that moment where I was like, man, that's the power of backing up my word about like all the little things. But yeah, I'll get the trash. I'll do this, whatever it is. Same with my kids. If my kids are like, hey, you said you didn't do what you said, I'll be like, when have I not done what I said?
Yeah.
And they can't think of a time because I take it so seriously. And if you can get on the other side, that it's simple, not easy. Look, it's a lot of discipline, a lot of inconvenience. It'll also make you think twice about giving your word, like you said, because you know once you say it, you're going to do it. But that's our power to create.
Yeah.
And that's not just hacking it and being like, oh, I'm just going to say it.
And I've had people, you know, and this isn't like the best story, but I've also had people be like, well, you didn't do what you said. And I'll say, what did I say? Right? I didn't do what you heard. I'm asked, what did I say? Like, if you'll be very intentional with, like, you need to be intentional with your words because you're signing a contract. When you write a contract, there's clear terms.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna do this at this time, and if this doesn't happen at this time, then I'm going to do this. You want to be someone who's very intentional with your words, and that your words matter. And just like Nick's talking about with his wife, whether it's your wife or it's anybody else that maybe you struggle with that. It's like, man, why don't these people believe me?
Yeah.
Right. Don't look at them as the problem.
Yes,
you need to say, like, man, what have I been doing that when I say stuff, people don't believe me?
That's so good, G. All right. The last thing that words do, and this is, they're all tied together, G. Word is seed.
Yep.
And to think about word like seed.
These really are three different things.
Yeah.
Words create.
Yes.
Words are a contract, and words are seeds. Let's talk about how seed, you could think create and seed are different.
Yes.
But they're different. So words are seed.
Yeah, and this is the scripture, man. This scripture blows me away. If you're struggling to read the Bible, get on the proverb a day plan with us. There's 31 days in the longest month of the year. Good thing. There's 31 proverbs. 28 is the shortest. The point is, whatever date it is, read that proverb, and I promise you will start to grow in wisdom. What a great thing, and it makes it really simple. So the 18th, Proverbs 18, 20 through 21. From the fruit of a man's mouth, his stomach is satisfied. He is satisfied by the yield of his lips. Not many people talk about that one, and I think that's fascinating. Here's the one that lots of people talk about if you're in Christian circles. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. Those two verses are together, and I don't think that's on accident. I think that is unbelievably fascinating if you think about it. From the fruit of a man's stomach, or from a fruit of a man's mouth, his stomach is satisfied. Your stomach is a very physical sensation. So what it's telling us is exactly that right there. What comes out of your mouth?
Yeah, from the fruit of your mouth, you're satisfied. And what is the fruit of your mouth? That's verse 21.
Right.
Death and life.
Yes.
When you speak, you're putting seed in the ground. Is your seed germinated? It's not seed doesn't get fertilized. The right word is germinated.
Right.
Is your seed germinated? Is your seed fruitful? Does it produce, or do you put seed in the ground that nothing comes?
Right.
Nothing comes out of the ground. Would you keep going back to the same place to buy seed if you took it home and you put it in the ground, you followed the instructions, and you water it, and nothing happens?
Yeah. No, you wouldn't.
Right? You want seed that grows. You want seed that multiplies. I love in that verse, it says, Life and death are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it
Right.
eat its fruits, right? Those who love what? Those who love the power of the tongue, right? Those who understand God gave me a voice. God gave me the ability to speak. God gave me words that are a contract, right? God's word never returns void. We know that about God. His word is a perfect contract. What he says, it happens. When God speaks, things happen. He speaks things into motion immediately. He speaks things into creation. And God also speaks seed into people, just like he did with Abraham. Here's what I'm going to do with you.
Right.
I'm going to make you the father
Yes.
of many nations, right? That's a contract that God made with Abraham, but it was also seed in him because it grew him.
Yeah.
By Abraham's faith in what God said, it changed him. He continued to grow because of that. When you speak things, you're planting seed in your life. The same way they'd be like, okay, well, maybe I can't necessarily like just speak and the stars come into motion.
Right.
But what I can do is begin to speak life
Yes.
over myself. And the more that I say I'm healthy, the more that I say, and also I want to say about the power of your words, where does the words come from? What's in your heart?
Yes.
This is scripture. Right? You can't just manufacture artificial words. It's like, well, I'm just going to say the words. You can't just recite them. The Bible also talks about this, right? This is the sons of Sceva who try to go around and cast out demons
Right.
by the power. Like it says that they tried to say what Paul said.
Yeah, by the power of the God that Paul preaches.
Right.
Yeah.
They called it a spell.
Yeah.
Right. That if we just say the words,
Yes.
it doesn't work that way. You can't just say the words. But if what your words are come out of your heart, that's when you give life to your seed, right? So if you believe what you're saying and you begin to say it over and over again, I know God has a plan for my life. I know I'm healthy. I know I have a future. I know I'm going to do these things. If it's coming, the life of it is coming out of your heart, that's when you'll slowly begin to see those things.
Yes.
And just like a seed that grows, it doesn't happen all at once, but eventually that seed will start to sprout and you'll be like, oh, something happened,
Yeah.
right? There's change, and you'll continue to speak to it, and you'll continue to water that seed that sprouted. It's just like the vision that God gives us. If you'll continue to speak life, if you'll continue to water your seed, you'll see growth happen. And nothing is more encouraging than seeing that
Yes.
small little action
Yeah.
that is a result of what you believe and the result of what you've spoken.
Yeah, I remember you saying one of the most amazing things that can happen is to take a dream that's in your head and bring it out and see it come into reality. And that all starts with thinking and then speaking. And you touched on it. I mean, I think the natural thing, you see people sometimes, they'll be like, oh, I can't. Oh, wait, no, I don't say can't anymore. It's like, well, blatantly you do because you just did. So, I mean, you talked about it. Jesus says this. He says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So
Yeah.
what your words do is they reveal. And that's where it really is seed, because he says either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For the tree is known by its fruit. And guess what? Your seed is how fruit grows, right? And so out of your abundance, what's actually inside you. We heard a story from Terry Saville Foy, who preached at our church recently. She was with John Maxwell. And what was it? John Maxwell said, I can tell if you're going to be successful.
John Maxwell said, he said, I can spend a day with any person and tell them whether or not they'd be successful. And that's kind of a scary thing.
Oh, yeah.
To anybody. Like, how could you know by one day of spending time with me? And it's two things: by what you say and what you do.
Yeah.
Do your words and actions line up? What is it that you say? Are you speaking life? Are you speaking success? Are you speaking the future? What kind of things do you do? Do your actions follow your words? Do you have good habits? Do you have
Yeah.
good process? Do you have healthy routine? John Maxwell says, I can spend a day with anybody and I know if you'll be successful or not.
Yeah.
And one of those, we talk about actions on this podcast all the time. Today we're talking about words. What does your future look like based upon the words that you speak?
So good. Like if somebody could literally transcribe, I mean, I'm sure ChatGPT can do this now, but like if somebody could transcribe everything you said in a day, what would your future? Yeah, what would your future look like?
It's just like the attitude,
Yeah.
thing, right? Like with the statue
Yes.
of your, like that's your life, right? Like someone is going to carve a statue of you. What is the attitude of it? Well, what if someone like transcribed? What if there was the transcription of all the words that you'd ever spoken? What's the nature of them? How much of it is speaking life and how much of it is speaking death? There's a great quote. I believe this Eleanor Roosevelt. I may be wrong on this, but I've heard this one many times over. Like small people talk about people.
Yes.
Normal people talk about events. Great people talk about ideas. Great people talk about the future.
It is Eleanor Roosevelt. Well
right?
done.
Great people speak life. And so look at the substance of your conversation. Look at the substance of your words. How much of it was life? How much of your time did you spend talking about people or events versus how much of your time did you spend talking about this is what kingdom is, this is what God says, this is what I believe, this is where my life is going. Your words tell a story, and they're telling the story of what your future is. If people think like, man, I wish I could do this, I wish I could do that. Just by that very language, you're taking the power out of what you say. Begin to speak over yourself. Begin to speak over your life and say, this will be my future. This is where I'm going. And I'm not talking about manifestation, which I believe manifestation is garbage. Right? What I am talking about is what the Bible says, that out of the heart the mouth speaks, that life and death are in the power of the tongue. And don't take God out of that. Yeah. Leave God in it and understand the power that God gave you. God's the one who gave you a voice. God's the one who spoke the earth into motion, and God's the one who put power in your words. Let God change your heart, and out of that, let your words be fruit. Let your words be seed. Let your words be a great contract, and let your words create the life that God intended for you.